This week, we're being asked to play a little bit wider of coding. We're going to be asked to play with classes. So I've already created a project here. If you don't remember, hopefully you do by now, but I just said new project, and then I created a Windows console app. I named it Tony Phase 3 for lack of a better name. And I've gotten the source code from the base application that you can download on the assignment. And so that source code looks like this. I just pasted it in here, so it's just part of my project. You got to remember when you're dealing with the source code they have, it's not the same thing as the project, so that's why I'm putting it in here with this standard header inside of application, which, by the way, if you haven't looked at it, that standard header is right over here. Files right over here, and you can see it's not much going on inside of that standard header, but it is needed. It is required for the source code that we have. So here is the code that's going in, and it's asking you to create your own class. The demo they're giving you is a class called employee. I think it's maybe something like customer they're asking, if I remember. I'm not worried about the specific. I want you to create a class that you can create their class, but otherwise make a class that resonates with you, something you're curious about, something you like to practice coding. So in this first discussion, I want to talk about what that class is and what it means by reviewing this class that they have here. So the first thing they have a class, it represents a single thing. Remember that a class is a prototype for a bunch of things that will be out there doing work. You can think of a class as kind of like the blueprint for a house. You can have a neighborhood which has the exact same house blueprint used over and over and over again. The same design is used over and over and over again. You've probably seen them in different places where every house essentially looks the same. Particularly out west, where you have different southwestern styles, Adobe front-faced house. It's actually quite charming, though in other places it's maybe a little bit less architecturally interesting. So that's the same concept here. Is we're building a blueprint for objects that will be created later on. And so when we build class employee, it's going to be, when we get to runtime, it's going to be an employee that is, say, Tony, or it's going to be the president of the company and the janitor of the company and the head of engineering and the head of marketing and all these different real people with real names. And the things that we care about here is as far as data goes, are the things that we've put in private attributes right here. So everything under this section is private, means it's hidden, it's encapsulated. So think of it as like your bank account balance. It's something that you know about, but you don't share with the whole world. Now your name, you might share with the whole world. We'll get back to that in a second. But there's certain things that are private details that you keep hidden. And so in this case, they have name, address, email, and the number of vacation days. Now I'll tell you, I don't like the way they've named these because inside the class, I already know I'm in the employee class. So do EMP name, EMP address, EMP email. Of course, it's the employee's name, email, and address and whatnot. It's in the employee class. So it's not my favorite stylistically. It it all varies on a little bit on the language, a little bit on who's writing the code, a little bit on where they work. There's some variations inside of there. There's a reason that they did this here a little bit. We'll see in a second, but not my not my favorite way to do it, and we'll see that in later videos how I'll do it differently. But these are the things that we're going to describe the employee objects, the things that make one employee object different from the other. If you're an employee, I'm an employee, we each have different names, addresses, emails, probably different number of vacation days. Maybe we start the same, but we take vacation at different times and such. So that's the information. You need to come up with the information that means something to your class. If you were talking about, again, a credit card, all credit cards have a number. They have a expiration day, expiration month and year. They have that little code on the back. Typically, they have a name that's printed on the front of it. Often, they have an address or at least a zip code that's used to validate that credit card. Those are all things you could be capturing information. It's up to the context of what you have going on. If you're doing a credit card that's going to be used for one payment right now, You might store slightly different information than a credit card that might be stored for future recurring payments. Like maybe in that future payment, they'll have a limit of how much you can charge to that card each time. So it's important to understand there's different approaches based off of context, and there's different ways to make those things happen. Your first step is going to be figuring out what you need to store. Don't store everything. Simplify it to just the things you need. From there, the public side of it is the behavior, possibly data, that I'm going to share with the rest of the world. So if I want to be able to change the name, address, email, I need to provide what's called a setter and a getter to be able to get and set those things. And the typical answer to that is you have the word get or set, followed by exactly the name of the variable, typically starting with that camel case. So starting with a capital letter, lowercase, capital letter inside of here. And then since we're in the header at this point, we're just describing the class, I don't have to give the parameter a name. I can just give the parameter a type to get started with. And so that's the setter for the employee name, and then here's the getter, which was going to return that to you. Again, address has its own. And let's say I don't want you to be able to change some information, perhaps. Maybe I don't let you change the number of days directly. That would be great. As an employee, I can just say, give me 50 days. That might not be something that's allowed. Well, you just don't provide that method then. You don't provide a setter. You can provide a getter and not a setter. In theory, you can provide a setter and not a getter. It seems a little bit awkward to be able to change data but not be able to see it. But this is just that header information. This is also, by the way, just the definition of the class. This is just saying what this class is going to be. The implementation of the class is the rest of this going down, where I actually now at this point, you can see I'm implementing the name here, and now I give this parameter an actual name. And now you can see why it does EMP name, because it makes a differentiation between the parameter and the value. It seems to me like it's a little backwards. Why not just say set name and then call the variable EMP name and then set the one internally as name? Again, it's a choice. It's as all code is, a style choice. Excuse me. So this is the implementations of these, and these are pretty simple. The setters just store the values. The getters just return the values. The constructor is right here. The constructor is what sets up the class. In this case, it's just setting them up with empty values to start with. Then there's a little test application. Oh, this test is actually from code that I played with later on. I apologize. That's not supposed to be there. Here's the display menu now and some of the rest of the stuff that we saw before. And it's going to now take advantage of this employee class in doing its work. So for now, I just want you to start thinking about what your class is going to be. And then the next step we're going to do is actually start building a class. For me, let's say I'm going to build, I'm not going to do a person at all. I'm going to do something entirely different. I'll build a product. So it's what I did to play with it a little bit and make sure I set up a little bit. So I'll do it again just because that should be nice and clean. So go ahead and take a moment, think about it. Maybe look over the code here, get it set up in the environment. You can try and run it as it is. And we're going to build something way different than this. Not totally different there, but a little bit different. This is going to be your class. But I want you to think of something that is meaningful and then start thinking of the attributes for that. We won't worry about behaviors for now. Just start thinking about attributes.